I was keen to get somebody on from SARS to talk about the revenue side of the South African budget. So we're talking here about the money that comes in that does all the good things that we look at and do. What's the trend with regard to income tax from individuals? Firstly, with respect to the number of individuals, as well as then in respect of the collection rates.
Well, if you were to go back just 1 year with the recession, we saw some decline in tax revenue, as everybody have noticed.
Understandably, yeah.
However, on the personal income tax side, we managed to sustain our revenue collections, despite the 1 million or so job losses that we've had in that period. And that shows the income inequality and explains some part of the Gini coefficient that we have in this country. Sure. So what we have found now is that recently, and well, of course, after the recession, we've recovered then again to register tax collections of 672 in total.
That's the number of people?
No, that is the total collected over the past year. So after suffering the 4.5% loss in revenue year on year in the recession, we managed to recover 12% of that. So we're on an upward curve again. And
would you say, Randall, that everyone who is formally employed is now inside the PAYE net?
Yes, we have managed to establish relationships with the employers where we are now able to capture your data of the employers. So there's an additional check whether people are indeed registered that should be registered. And that's why our individual registers have grown to about 11 million now from about 5 million about 2 or 3 years ago. But coming to your question about whether everybody's paying their fair share, we have uncovered, and some of our research have shown, and this was enabled through our third-party validations through eNatus and the banks and insurance companies, that there are a number of individuals that are not paying their fair share. Here we specifically refer to the high net worth individuals. We found, in fact, that about 2,800 of them which qualify for high net worth status, in other words, they earn more than 7 million rand a year, and they have 75 million rand in assets, that their asset base is not consistent with their tax declarations. And we are zoning in on them now. So of the 2,800 we found, only 330 were formally registered for tax, and if they're registered, they pay a very small amount in comparative terms.
Just unpack that for me, because it really rang a bell in my head when I saw that. I was interested in talking to you about it. So explain, these are individuals that you perceive from the income declarations or from the company side that are getting very high salaries, but they're not paying as much income tax as you expect, or is it more people that you've picked up from other records like eNatus and so on who are asset rich and therefore appear to be living a good lifestyle but have a low income?
That's exactly right. The second scenario would be the correct one. We found that if you look at their lifestyles, their asset base, they own yachts and they own jets and all the trappings of the rich. And then when you go look at their tax status, they're actually very poorly represented in the tax income categories. So now, for instance, a person with a yacht of 10 million rand or so declare he's only earning 330,000 rand a year.
And do you think it's the case like Mr. Dave King, where he has everything in trusts, or he's using these assets but they seem to belong to someone else?
Well, what's happening is that the most difficult the most difficulty in dealing with these things is actually the transparency of information, people being able to move their monies all over the world. And that's why the latest development, which was lent some impetus with the recent recession, the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, that's why that is so important. Because now, for the first time, we can actually see into foreign bank accounts or whether people are shifting monies around through sophisticated
tax schemes. Which is a great point and leads me to a follow-on question, and that is that I know that the amnesty was quite successful in getting South Africans with foreign assets to declare them, but I did hear one of your colleagues, I forget who, speaking on the Afrikaans radio channel, saying that they thought that there was still a very significant value of money out there that belongs to South Africans which is undeclared.
Yes, no, that's indeed so, and with our voluntary program now of declarations, the VDP program that we have now instituted, we actually see some of those individuals coming forward. We've already received 2,000 applications for that program, and this is only to deal with your penalties and your interest. You will still have to carry your tax liability or still perform against your tax liability. So it shows that there's still a lot of work to be done. And as I said earlier, with this forum on transparency and bank secrecy, where we play a prominent role, I should say, in the OECD environment and of course in the G20 environment, that shows that there's still a lot to be harvested.
Okay, because I mean, one of my favorite economic writers, Francis Fukuyama, the guy that wrote, I think it's called End of History or something, he said one of the key attributes of a successful society is that you've successfully co-opted your elites into paying their share. And their share is very high because obviously they're making a lot of money, they are wealthy, so their share in numeric terms is going to be large. And that can contribute quite a big part of the total net income tax received. Do you think South Africa... You know, we know the politics of South Africa are complex and we have an intriguing political history. But do you think we're heading into an era where that inclusivity and that feeling that you must pay your share even if you are wealthy and the large numbers is there? Do you feel you're winning the battle?
I think so. I think that if one were to look at the programs that were instituted and the current trends that we are watching, is that more and more people feel that there's a new tax morality as to where that's emerging. If you look at the cooperation of the tax havens throughout the world, how they are scampering to get on board with all these exchange of information, there is a realization that everybody has to pay their fair share for the benefit of the entire globe. I mean, also poor people can only need to become part of the economic equation if we were to go forward, well, I mean, especially so in South Africa, I would imagine.
As you say, you're involved globally, so do you think we, from a tax compliance point of view of the wealthy, where do we fit compared to countries like Greece and others that seem to have big problems in that area too?
Well, look, like I said, it's all boils down to the availability of information and exchange thereof. But our estimates show that we are actually doing not that badly in comparison with the developing world, and that our performance is more closer to the sophistication of the developed world. Having said that, of course, that must be qualified with the statement that as soon as we start to more actively engage these other countries with regards to exchange of information, we might uncover more or we might uncover less. So that's basically the dilemma that we have at the moment.
I guess in part that's because the level of corporate governance of our companies by international standard is reputed to be quite high. So if you've got the companies making sure that the tax reporting from the employer side is coming through and you've got good IT systems as you have, then you've kind of got half the battle won. Okay, let's just shift gear for a minute. You know, you mentioned the poor and their contribution to the tax base. Why is it that a relatively poor country like South Africa has VAT at a level which results in quite a lot of collection? I know for poor people this ends up being their biggest contributor, and it means that they are very significant taxpayers on every single rand that they spend. In some countries, VAT is seen as being too regressive and you wouldn't have it. How do you guys feel about VAT and the fact that VAT collections are strong and ongoing? Are you comfortable with that level?
Well, look, if you compare ourselves, our VAT levels with the rest of the world, we're actually rather on the lower side.
At the 14%.
Yeah, 14%, yes. And for the poor, the number of provisions had been made with zero rating and affordability of foodstuff and all those things. However, having said that, a country's tax structure is essentially determined by by a lot of things, not just the economy. It's determined by its ideological stance, by sociological responsibility, by its social welfare system and all of those things. And therefore, we are quite comfortable that we are not overtaxed in the VAT environment. And if you look at the current developments from the recession onwards, is that we managed to sustain VAT collections fairly well. We didn't lose, we didn't go down, and the growth was subdued, but it was okay. And we start seeing it starting to recover now with the retail sales picking up and so on. And surprisingly enough, our car sales exceed our retail sales quite significantly. So South Africans is a nation of drivers.
The love affair with the car continues.
And there, of course, there are a number of reasons for that, which we can go into.
Okay, in fact, what I'd like to do with the last question we've got remaining is just turn to corporate taxes, because, I mean, in your job, you presumably have to sit there with your spreadsheets and your projections and worry about the amount of money that's coming in and what the shortfall might be and what, therefore, deficit funding might be required. But with corporate taxes, I mean, I noticed that it's very, very lumpy. So you've got some massive taxpayers like Sasol, you've got the mines, the platinum boys, the coal guys, and that sort of thing. Plus, of course, you know, some of your other successful corporates. Now, when you have an economic downturn, that's one thing. You know, you can expect a little bit of a diminution. But what do you do in a case where you've got a company like Sasol that has enormous revenue swings as a function of the rand and of the oil price, two exogenous variables? How can you plan around that? And how do you know with any confidence what you can pencil in for corporate taxes in year 2, 3 out in your plans if they're subject to those kinds of volatility swings?
And what adds to that volatility, if I may, is the capital expansion programs, because that has got significant tax implications. And your question is quite correct, and of course we can't mention names, but I mean it is quite a concentrated economy. Yes, what we found is that those swings are quite as volatile as you described it. In fact, we took a big hit in CIT in the recession, 30 billion hit, and mainly in the mining and the finance sectors. But But what we do to try and anticipate it is to keep, through our large business center, is to keep contact and to have a client relationship with these tax payers, because I know that they are as concerned about those volatilities, and of course the impact that have on the national fiscus. It could be quite dramatic. So we keep a dialogue open with them, we keep discussions open with them, and of course we also try to anticipate. The good thing is that they tend to be a bit more conservative normally than what we expect them to be. And so there has been some sort of feeling that has been developed throughout the years as to what the elasticity is of their projections and so on.
And I guess
but we did take a big knock into it.
The good thing is that they're all listed companies with their shareholders on their backs trying to maximize profits, so their interests and your interests are roughly similar.